asking around this week for some stories about this, about getting buried by mistakes. And my dad suggested Chuck Colson as an example. I'm a little embarrassed to admit I had never heard of Chuck Colson, so I looked him up. Charles, or Chuck Colson, was a special counsel to President Nixon. He had distinguished himself as a student, served in the Marine Corps, got into politics, founded a law firm, and established himself as a powerful presence in Washington before being asked to join Nixon's administration. Chuck was a success. He was going places. That is, until the Watergate scandal broke. In the investigation and reporting of that scandal, it came to light that Chuck was not such an upstanding guy. He became known as Nixon's hitman, the evil genius of an evil administration. The public learned that Chuck had spread rumors about his opponents, leaked confidential information, proposed firebombing a building and stealing its files, and incited a group of construction workers to attack high school and college students engaged in an anti-war demonstration. That particular bit of work resulted in a riot in New York City that left more than 70 people injured. Chuck was indicted and accused of several crimes and eventually pled guilty to obstruction of justice. He went to federal prison. Locked in a cell with a ruined reputation and a devastated career, Chuck was, for all intents and purposes, dead and buried, entombed in his mistakes. Chuck set his mind on the flesh and found death. As you might have guessed, though, this wasn't the end of Chuck's story. After he was indicted and before he went to prison, Chuck was given a copy of C.S. Lewis's book, Mere Christianity. And after reading it, he became a Christian. He joined a fellowship group, began praying regularly, and from his time in prison, became convinced that God was calling him to develop a prison ministry. Upon his release, Chuck founded a prison fellowship, which is still one of the nation's largest outreach programs to prisoners, ex-prisoners, and their families. Chuck gave the rest of his life to this cause, and he made a major impact in the area of prison reform and in the lives of individuals. Chuck's life, his identity, was reoriented. He set his mind on the Spirit and found life and peace. The force of sin and death still follows us around. That old way of life is still a part of our reality. We still find ourselves entombed sometimes. We work ourselves to exhaustion and beyond because we believe we are defined by the quality of the work we produce. We overcommit and stretch ourselves too thin because we think the busier we are, the more we are accomplishing. We worry about who will show up for our events, our causes, our parties, because we tie our identity to our popularity. We deprive our bodies of basic needs and beat them into submission because we believe our value is tied to our appearance. We hide our insecurities, our fears, our weaknesses, and our failings because we base our worth on an idea of independence. In these and so many ways, we find ourselves buried. But this is not the end of our story. Paul declares to us, you are not in the flesh, you are in the Spirit. The promise is that these tombs can't hold us anymore. Our sins, our mistakes, our failings, these are not who we are. You are not the sum of your mistakes. You belong to the Spirit. And as with Lazarus, Jesus is calling you. Whatever it is that buries you today, in whatever tomb you sit, know that Jesus is calling you out from death and into life and peace. We are in the Spirit. Thanks be to God.